first two episodes of HBO Max's Velma are out.
Fuck.
Okay. Now, the show isn't exactly good, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen either. I kind of just went through the show like this. Now, I know that isn't a good thing, but it could be significantly worse. Now, I am going to talk about the first two episodes of the show. There will be a few spoilers in there in case you care about getting spoiled for the show. And I'm going to talk about it in two different ways, at least for this video in particular. I want to address how the show holds up as an adaptation in the Scooby-Doo mythos, as well as just talking about it as a show by itself. So, that being said, let's talk about Velma episodes 1 and 2. Now, as a Scooby-Doo show, I don't think Velma really holds up in that regard. I cannot judge it based on the mystery yet, as there are still 8 more episodes left in the season, so I'm not going to judge on how the show unfolds a mystery that isn't complete yet. But what I can talk about is the characterization and comedy of the show. And as it stands right now, it's not doing a great job at that. This feels like if you ask a Riverdale fan who has watched nothing but teen dramas what these characters would act like by just showing them a picture. And that isn't exactly a good thing, and I can understand why fans of Scooby-Doo in general would be very upset about this. I mean, it bothers me, but I don't hate it nearly as much as you would expect, and that's probably because I don't have the same level of connection to Scooby-Doo as a lot of people. Now, inversely, when I saw Batman v Superman back in the day, Batman is my favorite superhero, so when I saw Batman killing, I got very upset about that because I don't feel like that's in his character, and I can definitely understand someone who holds Scooby-Doo in the same regard that I held Batman in being very upset by the show, because none of the characters really act the way they do in the previous iterations. It doesn't feel like they held those characters intact. The show very much feels like it's trying to be like Harley Quinn, another adult animated series on HBO Max, but the problem is it's not exactly executing that very well. The Harley Quinn show flanderizes the characters' traits to make them more comedic for the show while still maintaining the core aspects of the characters. Velma feels like it wrote 5 new characters and put them in the skins of the mystery gang, which isn't working. And I can definitely see why people are not happy about anything that's going on there. And lastly, before I move on to just talking about this as a show, Scooby could definitely be in this show. I remember one of the things that was said about Velma is that they couldn't put Scooby-Doo in the show because they felt like he wouldn't fit tonally in with the show, that he's too childish. And, what? Scooby would fit perfectly in this show. This show is extremely goofy and ridiculous. I don't understand what you mean by Scooby-Doo couldn't fit in this show. Like, this very much has the same level of ridiculous childishness that I would expect from a Scooby-Doo franchise to have Scooby-Doo be a part of it easily. This is the same show where Shaggy was about to fight a thief with a sword. That is absolutely ridiculous. This is the same show where Daphne and Velma jump out of a 3rd-story building riding a suitcase. You're telling me that a somewhat talking dog couldn't fit in something this ridiculous? I do not believe you. And speaking of the suitcase scene thing, this really bothered me as I was watching it. During the scene, Velma goes down the stairs of the school on the suitcase, but then a second later she crashes into Daphne and they go out of the 3rd-story window, which appears to be the highest level of the school. So how did Velma go down the stairs to then crash into Daphne to go out the floor that she just went? It's a nitpick. It's a nitpick. I know it's a nitpick, but like it bothered me a bit as well as this nitpick as well. At the beginning of the show, Velma just like hits Daphne with like whatever this weapon is, and then like a scene later, she tells the cops that she was just waiting in the bathroom for everybody to leave so she could do what she needed to do. And it's just like, no, you didn't. That's actually not true. You assaulted somebody. Like, how is that waiting casually for people to leave? So, like, what? Velma as a show right now, the only thing I really have to judge the show off of is the animation, the comedy, because the mystery isn't complete yet. So the animation of this show, since I want to do have some positives here, is awesome. I love the animation of this show. It looks so good. I mean, just look at this. Look how cool this is. Like, I really love this right here. It's just, chef kiss. Awesome. Love it. The animation is significantly better than the posters they put out for the show. Like, the show's advertisement is complete and total garbage, and it really didn't showcase how well the show looks. But actually sitting down and watching a fully finished, released episode of the show, I can tell that there was a lot of love put into this animation because it actually does look good. Now, does it look nearly as good as the scene or others of this caliber 24/7? No, obviously, that's impossible. You know, it takes a lot of time and effort to animate things. But overall, the animation of the show does look fairly good, and I'm very happy to say that because that's something I wasn't really expecting with this show. I was expecting it to have like the same quality of animation as shows like Chicago Party On and Paradise PD and Farzar and everything like that. And speaking of those shows, that is the level of comedy that you can expect from Velma. Now, I do not mean that the comedy is like gross out, absurd humor like those shows typically have. I mean that the blatant, here's a thing that happens kind of humor is what Velma has, except instead of it being gross out, it's meta. So in Velma, a lot of the characters, particularly Velma in herself, she will point out something that is meta or self-aware, and that's supposed to be the joke. However, it isn't a joke. You just pointed out a fact or just made a statement about something, and you're waiting for me to laugh as if that's the joke. Literally, the second scene of the show is about Daphne talking to a bunch of girls in a shower about how shows are over-sexualized.
Have you ever noticed how pilot episodes of TV shows always have more gratuitous sex and nudity than the rest of the series? Oh my god, I have. So true.
And I'm just watching it like, was this supposed to be funny because you're doing the thing that you're pointing out? Because I don't find this very funny. Like, I understand comedy is subjective, so obviously people could have a different opinion than me, but on a personal level, pointing out the thing that you're talking about as a problem isn't funny. Like, that's like if I literally went, hey, this is what I use to make my afro nice and soft. It's not funny, is it? No, of course not. It's not funny. Because why would it be funny? I just pointed out a fact. Like, why would you laugh at that? And that's kind of the humor that Velma goes with. It just points out self-aware and meta things and expects you to find it funny, and it isn't funny. It's just a statement. Now, that being said, there are a couple of jokes in the show that I found genuinely funny, and I really want them to do more of that, because it's like when you try to be funny, it is funny instead of you trying to be self-aware and meta. The show tries way too hard to be meta and self-aware, and it's terrible at being those things. Meanwhile, when it actually tries to be funny, it was genuinely funny. Like, there's a scene where Velma reminisces about spending time with her mother, and it's all heartwarming and sweet. And then there's a scene later on where Velma realizes that she's misremembering all of those moments that she had with her mother, and she was just like a little menace to her mother. Like, do more of that. That's funny. People will like this show more if you do more of that. It's genuinely good. And this show has a good foundation. I'm interested in the mystery of this show. I want to know who this killer is that is cutting out people's brains. My boy out here like Sylar from Heroes. Nobody remembers that show but me, but it doesn't matter. Like, I want to learn more about that. That's interesting. I want to see how, like, Fred deals with the fact that he's trapped in prison now, because that happens at the end of the second episode. He's accused for murder and he gets locked in prison. So I want to see how that happens. I want to see how he deals with the emotional ramifications of the fact that the people he knows got him thrown in prison because they accused him of it, or the fact that his own self-consciousness is what got him in there in the first place. Because during the trial, Fred gets off for the crime. They're able to prove his innocence, but everyone was making fun of him because of the way that they proved his innocence, that he snaps and ends up pseudo-admitting that he is the killer, which gets him thrown in prison. Like, how is he processing this? I want to know how he's dealing with that. I want to see Velma deal with the fact that her mom disappeared, and she's unsure if her mom just abandoned her, which is what she thought briefly between the events of episode 1 and 2, or if there is a deeper mystery behind it. I want to know which turns out to be true. I want to know what's in this gift that Velma is idiotically not opening from her mother, because that gift is clearly going to have some sort of clue in it that is going to lead her to whatever mystery is dealing with her mom's disappearance. But whatever. I want to know what's going on with Daphne, because they developed her character to be an orphan who is obsessed with finding her birth family. I want to know what's going to happen with that, because I'm unsure if Daphne's last name in this is still Blake. I could have just missed it. Like, I could have mentioned that the officer couple that are her family, their last name is Blake, so hers is still Blake. Or if it's going to be that the Blakes are Daphne's real family and she has to find them. You know, Norville is he's just kind of there being a simp for Velma. So, I mean, like, that's a thing. He's probably the least interesting character to me. You know, like, literally his whole plot of the second episode is that Velma's like, hey, Norville, can you give me $500? And he's like, I don't have it. So he spends the entire episode literally trying to sell his belongings, including his own kidney, to get $500. And I did love the fact that at the end of the episode, when he did get the money, he ended up not taking it, and things just worked out for Velma anyway. And then he kind of realized how much in the friend zone he's in when he saw Velma making out with Daphne. That I found kind of funny. Now, I do think the dialogue of this moment could have been written a little bit better, but overall, I did find that really funny. So Velma does have good elements to it. It has a good show that's just buried underneath the fact that it's a Scooby-Doo thing, that people don't find faithful to Scooby-Doo, and the fact that it has a bunch of, like, meta self-aware statements in it. So, like, if you dig down underneath all of that, you can see that there is a good show here. And I really feel like they just need to focus up on the right aspects, and we can have a really great thing going here. So those are really my thoughts on the first 2 episodes of Velma. I'm sorry if you wanted, like, a play-by-play of, like, every single scene that happened in the first 2 episodes. It's not really how I do things, but yeah, nevertheless, those are my thoughts on it. I'll probably be back next week to talk about episodes 3 and 4, as HBO Max is releasing these episodes the same way that Pretty Little Liars Original Sin released, with, like, multiple episodes a week until the show ends. And for Velma, I believe it's going to be 2 episodes a week. So yeah, that'll be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on Velma down below if you have seen it or what have you. So last but not least, I'm the Innocent Villain. And remember, folks, you're innocent until proven villainous, and I'll catch you next time.